Welcome to the Scrum Sessions podcast, the first recording of 2024. Here in Dallas, I am Q.
And I'm Garion, straight from Berlin, Germany.
Yeah, and you wanted to talk about something today, my friend, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, because you're always harping on the Scrum Masters and what they're doing wrong. I actually want to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about product owners, right? We can talk about Scrum Masters some other time because there is quite a bit of stuff that takes us both off. But I would like to talk a little bit more about product owners, especially since you're an expert on product management, and talk a little bit more about what the pet peeves are from your side, from my side, and like what product owners can pay attention to so that they actually don't fall into these traps. So do you have any pet peeves about product owners?
Oh, God. Let's start with the simplest one, okay?
Okay.
One is understanding what the role actually is supposed to be doing, right? And unfortunately, and I think we discussed this in another podcast, I think for a few months ago, actually, there are several levels of product management in an organization, right? And product owner is one of them. Now, if you have simple team, yeah, it's simple, but that's not the case. You always work with more people. The first pet peeve I have is product owners who turn into user story jockeys. If I want somebody to manage a backlog, I'm sorry, I can find somebody way cheaper. So that's number one. So ping pong, the ball in your court now. What's your next pet peeve?
But that's actually interesting that you say you can find somebody cheaper, and that is pretty true. And I think it connects to my one. And I'm actually stealing this from something I saw about product management, which is very closely related to product ownership. But I absolutely loved it. And so the person was saying they were actually referring to the Austrian lyricist Rilke, right? And so this lyricist, he was once asked if anyone should become a writer, and he said, absolutely not. You shouldn't become a writer unless you have to, right? And so this person was making the argument that it's the same for a product manager or product owner, right? So you shouldn't be one because it's actually fucking hard, right? It's really difficult. It's the toughest job in Scrum, and even if you don't do Scrum, product management is incredibly hard. You have a lot of responsibility. And so my pet peeve is that often people do it that are not being called to it. And actually, I think then it's very, very difficult to do the job well if you're not being called to it, because it takes a lot out of you, right? It's like writing the next American novel. It's like starting a company, right? And so you actually have to be called to it to do a good job. That's not to mean that if you haven't been called to it, you haven't been dreaming about becoming a product manager, product owner for your whole life, that you can't be good at it. That's not what I'm saying, but usually like you have to feel some passion for it, because otherwise you might be some lukewarm product owner that, yes, writes a couple of user stories, but there's actually a lot more going on than just writing user stories.
Yeah, it is. And I had a client years ago. We had about 39 teams on that group. And we had 3 product managers. They were director level, very good people. You know, they know market research. They understand a lot of the complexities of the role, you know. And the 39 product owners are proxies. You know, they're basically, if the team asks something, they'll say, oh, sorry, I have to go talk to the product manager about it, you know. And that's unfortunately, it's common. It's a common situation, very common situation. It's very inefficient. And I actually find it insulting calling these people product owners. You know, I don't know what a good title would be, but honestly, all they do is they get the intent from a product manager and they write user stories for that. And most of the time, not really well written, actually. And they just make sure it gets delivered at the end of the sprint. And then they go to the product manager and say, okay, we have this thing done, right? What you guys think? That's not the point. That's very inefficient. That creates a lot of waste. So there is the vocation to do the job. I agree with you. And there is also understanding that product management, it's a big art. It's also science to a certain extent. But what happens is usually only a few people actually have the big picture. And then when they decompose that big picture and backlog that goes to the teams, it becomes more mechanical to a certain extent. And I don't know if the way Scrum treats product ownership actually is realistic outside of a single team picture. Because in a single team, in a startup situation, you can see, okay, the product owner is a real product owner. He knows the product management aspect of the house. He knows the aspect of delivering stuff and etc. It's much more, I wouldn't say wearing multiple hats, but has multiple skill sets to bear. But when you are in a larger organization, normally that team level thing becomes very tactical. And at that point, I don't know if they should be called product owners, or even if I cannot find somebody to just do that job in a much simpler fashion, because the decision is actually being held at the product management side.
Very interesting. All right, let me go next. So for me, the next one is, and I want to be very compassionate. And actually, I'm not as critical of product owners because I just know how difficult their job is. But if there's something that I can wish to get from them, is that they have a business sense. Because it's all on well if you're really into product, and that's already like half the game, right? So this is already pretty good. If you're really into the product, into the UX, into like how people will use it. But you become that much more better if you actually have a sense of business, like some business knowledge, especially competitive strategy, because otherwise you might be really building the best product with a very efficient team or several teams, right? And you'll build it for 9 months, for a year, and you find out, wow, we went into a cul-de-sac, right? We are at a dead end and we can't get out of it anymore. Not because we built a bad product, not because the user interface is bad, not because you have accumulated too much technical debt, but simply because you didn't understand competitive strategies, right? And the stuff is actually not that difficult if you know like how to learn it. And so like if I have a wish list towards product owners, this would be pretty far up at the top, that they get an understanding of competitive strategy, of business strategy, and of business in general.
I couldn't agree more, because you see, I had this conversation multiple times. Oh, we have to have this in a product because competition has it. I said, well, really, if that's your only argument to add that feature, it's completely wrong, right? Because you are telling me that you are just doing something just because somebody has it. You don't know how people are receiving that, people who are using that competitor's product are receiving that. You don't know if that adds to their bottom line. You don't know a lot of things, right? Which brings me my next pet peeve, which is feature obsession. Let's put more stuff on a product. Let's put more stuff in a product. Let's put more stuff in a product. And I don't think people actually consider how that feature increase is actually degrading the experience of the end user of the product, right? Because before, maybe I had like 3 buttons on a toolbar and I use those things all the time. Now I have 15 buttons. Okay, then I have to customize the toolbar. Then I'm spending time doing that. And I had something in a product that I use that in between versions, they did not save my settings. I have to reconfigure everything again. Well, bottom line is I dropped the product and I found another one. So obsession with feature, it's a very dumb thing to do. And it comes to lack of business sense, lack of understanding the market, and more important, lacking of understanding how people use your product.
Yeah, that's a very good one. And I think somewhat related to that is one of my pet peeves with product owners, which is indecisiveness, right? So I always like to say that if a Scrum team isn't performing very well, not that much is going to happen, right? Problems actually start as soon as it picks up in productivity, right? Because then suddenly the impediments are going to be generated for the Scrum Masters, and then the product owners actually have to make sure that the backlog is filled adequately with stories for the team to work on. And so like the image that's sometimes in my mind, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but if you think of adventure movies, so for example, Indiana Jones, right? There's like in every Indiana Jones movie, there's always a scene where he and his party ends up in some kind of lorry, in some kind of, some kind of underground dungeon, and there's like a train track and they're all sitting in the lorry and it's going like 200 miles an hour. And they have to like switch the tracks, right? And it's like everything is happening so fast because they are like going very fast, and this split seconds decisions have to be made. And the worst thing you can do if you're in a situation like this is to stop and think for too long, right? Somebody has to make the calls. And it's absolutely natural that you're going to make wrong calls. You're going to take the wrong way, right? You're going to go off somewhere where you shouldn't have gone. But this is the nature of the game if you're quickly moving, and this is what Scrum is all about, right? And so if product owners are indecisive, they're going to actually destroy a good team, right? Think of a good team that's producing something very quickly. You have a good Scrum Master that's removing all the impediments. And then think of a product owner that's just way too slow, cannot make a decision. Well, what's going to happen? Everyone is going to be frustrated and lose faith in the product owner, right? Why? Because they're not making decisions quickly enough. And a decision is better than no decision, right? We understand that you can really do something wrong here and steer the whole team into the wrong direction. But the good thing, especially if you work in software, usually you can roll it back, right? It's not like you can never get back. So most of the times you can actually move it back. So if you have somebody that's super indecisive and always thinking, oh, but what could happen, is super scared, then that's a problem for a product owner, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that actually brings me back to the feature fantastic thing. More feature, more feature, more feature. One thing product owners fail to understand, and that works for software and non-software things, is there are things that you have to do in order to keep upgrading your product, in order to keep making your product better, and etc. And that is not necessarily creating new features. And if you want to talk software, we're talking technical debt, bugs, and all that crap. If you want to talk other stuff, I don't know, it's maybe changing from aluminum to titanium in your frame, so you can put more weight in there, something like that, right? And a lot of times product owners get into that, let's put new stuff. And eventually the stuff that you have becomes not manageable because you are always paying attention to future stuff, but you forget that in order to get to the future, you have to maintain the present and you have to provide an upgradable path. Some people change devices all the time, some people change software all the time, but a lot of people actually keep things for a long period of time. And in order to do that, you have to have a product that can be upgraded easily. And I think we don't pay enough attention to that. I had this argument with product owners forever, especially in the software domain. We can't fix that because we have a new feature to put out. Okay, so that fix that you refuse to do, it's actually getting me really pissed off, and I'm going to use another product because this bug has been there forever, right?
Yeah.
And you keep putting features out. So it goes back to the feature factory and all that stuff, and it connects to the lack of business understanding, to the lack of customer understanding, and a lot of other things.
Yeah. So I got one last one, and that is, in this, I think it's very particular to product owners, and that might trigger some people, but it ticks me off if they fall too much in love with the different tools that they can use for their job, right? I understand that there's a lot of different tools, for example, different mapping systems, and I get that they are not all the same, and I get that it actually, as you go through that evolution as a product manager, product owner, you have to try them out, right? You have to see, is user story mapping the right thing for me? Is impact mapping the right thing for me? What kind of roadmap do we want to use? I get all that, and that I actually assume that a good product owner on their journey, they're actually going to try all of them out. But what I sometimes see is that they do this trying at the cost of not actually having the team deliver stuff, right? It's kind of like the Scrum Masters always switching up the retros and over-investing in that. It's kind of similar with the product owners where they constantly change their methodology of how they represent the work that needs to be done. And they're not focused enough on actually delivering something, right? And then they write long blog posts about it. And I love it. I really love it as long as the team delivers, right? This is always I'm a Scrum Master at heart, right? So as long as the team delivers, I actually think it's a good sign to see the product owner go through these evolutions and learn all the different methodologies. But if it comes at the cost of not delivering, then I think something is really wrong. And unfortunately, I see this quite a bit.
Yep, I'm there with you. I think we cover some good points in there for the product owner, product management organization, that especially at product owner level, that they should pay attention to. So I think that's it for this episode. And from Dallas, I am Q.
And from Berlin, I'm Gary-On. Nice to have you in this episode again, and hope to see you soon in a further episode. Take care. Bye-bye.